When Cassie Martinez walked into the back office of Ruby's Diner at 11:47 p.m., she expected to find the usual end-of-shift chaos: dirty aprons, leftover coffee, and the exhaustion that came from serving truckers and night shift workers for 12 hours straight. What she didn't expect was to find her boss Ruby counting a stack of cash that looked like more money than the diner made in a month. Ruby? Cassie hesitated in the doorway, clutching her purse and the tips that would barely cover her daughter's school supplies. Everything okay? Ruby looked up with tear-streaked cheeks and an expression that mixed desperation with something Cassie had never seen from the tough-as-nails woman who'd run the diner for 20 years. Complete defeat. "Cassie, honey, we need to talk." The conversation that followed shattered Cassie's carefully constructed world in less than 5 minutes. Ruby's ex-husband had gambled away the diner's loan payments. The bank was foreclosing in 2 weeks. Everyone, including Cassie, would lose their jobs unless Ruby could come up with $50,000 she didn't have. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Ruby said, her voice breaking. "I know you need this job. What with Emma starting high school and everything. I tried to figure out another way, but..." Cassie felt her chest tighten with familiar panic. At 28, she was a single mother working 2 jobs to keep herself and her 14-year-old daughter afloat. The diner job was her primary income, the steady paycheck that kept them in their tiny apartment, and Emma in school clothes that weren't from thrift stores. "How much time do we have?" Cassie asked, though she was already calculating. Her savings account had $300, she was behind on rent, and Emma needed new glasses that insurance wouldn't cover. 2 weeks, maybe less. That's when the diner's front bell chimed, announcing a late-night customer who would change everything. Through the pass-through window, Cassie could see a massive figure in leather settling into the corner booth, the one that regulars avoided because it was too close to the kitchen's heat and too far from the windows. "I'll get him," Cassie said, grateful for the distraction from Ruby's devastating news. The man who looked up when Cassie approached was nothing like the rough bikers who occasionally stopped at Ruby's for coffee and directions. This one was older, maybe 45, with prematurely silver hair and dark eyes that held depths Cassie couldn't immediately read. His leather vest bore patches she didn't recognize, but everything about his presence suggested someone accustomed to command and comfortable with solitude. "Coffee?" Cassie asked, forcing her usual customer service smile despite the chaos spinning through her mind. "Coffee and whatever pie you've got left." His voice was gravelly but surprisingly gentle. "You look like you've had a long day. If you love forbidden love stories, subscribe and don't miss the next one." Cassie poured coffee with hands that shook slightly, her mind still processing Ruby's news while trying to maintain professional composure. The man, she could see steel embroidered on his vest, watched her with the careful attention of someone who noticed details others missed. "You okay, miss?" Steele asked when Cassie set down his pie with more force than necessary. "Fine, just tired." The lie came automatically, a defense mechanism developed through years of handling her problems alone. Steele studied her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "Tired looks different from scared. You're scared." The observation was so accurate, it made Cassie's breath catch. She wasn't used to strangers reading her emotions so clearly, wasn't prepared for someone to see past the competent waitress facade to the terrified single mother beneath. "It's nothing I can't handle," Cassie replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "Most problems that scare good people are money problems," Steele said quietly. "How much do you need?" The question was so unexpected, so direct, that Cassie almost dropped the coffee pot. "Excuse me? You heard me. How much money would solve whatever's got you looking like the world's about to end?" Cassie stared at this stranger who'd somehow cut through her defenses with surgical precision. "Why would you ask something like that?" "Because I've got more money than I know what to do with and no one to spend it on. Because good people shouldn't have to suffer for other people's mistakes. Because sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be." Steele reached into his jacket and pulled out a wallet that was clearly custom-made, expensive leather worn soft from years of use. "I'm going to make you an offer, and I want you to think about it before you say no." He counted out bills, hundreds, more than Cassie made in 2 weeks, and placed them on the table between his coffee cup and pie plate. $5,000. Yours, right now, no strings attached." Cassie's eyes widened as she stared at money that could solve her immediate problems, and buy her time to find another job. What do you want? Be my date for a week. Your what? I've got business dinners, social events, places where showing up alone makes me look like exactly what I am. A lonely bastard who's forgotten how to connect with people. Steele's expression was carefully neutral, but Cassie caught something vulnerable in his voice. You pretend to be my girlfriend for 7 days, and the money's yours. That's prostitution. No, it's not. Separate rooms, no physical contact unless it's for show, and only the kind of show you're comfortable with. Steele's voice carried absolute sincerity. I need someone who can handle themselves in social situations. Someone who won't be intimidated by the world I move in. You need money fast enough to solve whatever crisis is making your hands shake. Cassie looked at the cash on the table, then at Steele's face, trying to read the motivations behind his incredible offer. $5,000 would save Ruby's diner, would buy her time to figure out what came next, would mean Emma could start high school without her mother's panic hanging over everything. Why me? Cassie asked. Because in 20 minutes of watching you work, I've seen you handle difficult customers with grace, manage multiple tables without losing composure, and maintain kindness even when you're clearly dealing with personal crisis. Steele's smile was surprisingly gentle. That takes character. Character can't be bought, but it can be borrowed for a week. Ruby appeared from the kitchen, her eyes immediately fixing on the money spread across the table. Cassie? What's going on? This is Steele, Cassie said, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. He's just made us both an interesting offer. As Cassie looked between the cash that could save everything and the enigmatic man who'd appeared exactly when she needed a miracle, she realized she was about to make the most dangerous decision of her life. The question wasn't whether she could trust Steele with a week of her time. The question was whether she could trust herself not to fall for a man who'd seen her desperation and responded with unexpected kindness. The next morning, Cassie stood outside Morrison Steel Company's headquarters in downtown Phoenix, clutching a small suitcase and questioning every decision that had led her to this moment. The building was glass and steel perfection, the kind of corporate monument that screamed serious money and serious power. Steele had given her the address along with the $5,000, which she'd immediately used to pay the diner's most urgent bills. Ruby had cried with relief, Emma had gotten her new glasses, and Cassie had bought herself a week to figure out what came next. But standing here in her best dress, a simple black number from Target that suddenly felt completely inadequate, she wondered if she'd made a deal with the devil. Ms. Martinez, a woman in an expensive suit approached from the building's entrance. I'm Sarah Chen, Mr. Morrison's assistant. He's waiting upstairs. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor gave Cassie time to process the magnitude of what she'd agreed to. This wasn't just some biker with disposable income. This was a man who owned buildings in downtown Phoenix, who commanded the kind of respect that came with serious wealth and influence. Steele's office overlooked the entire city, floor-to-ceiling windows providing a view that probably cost more than Cassie made in a year. The man himself stood with his back to the door, still wearing leather despite the corporate environment, a contradiction that somehow made perfect sense. Cassie, Steele said, turning as she entered. You came. You paid me to come. $5,000 buys a lot of showing up. Steele's smile was rueful. Fair enough. Coffee? Sarah makes it better than most restaurants. I'm good, thanks. Cassie set down her suitcase and studied the office that revealed more about Steele than she'd expected. Military commendations on one wall, photographs of motorcycle clubs and construction projects on another. This was a man who'd built something substantial from whatever foundation the military had provided. Questions? Steele asked, settling behind his desk with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to command. A few. Starting with your real name, what kind of business you actually run, and whether I'm going to end up on the evening news as part of some scandal I don't understand. Jake Morrison. I own Morrison Construction. We build bridges, highways, government contracts mostly. The motorcycle club is personal, not professional, and the only scandal you'll be part of is me showing up to boring dinners with a beautiful woman instead of making excuses for being alone. Why don't you have someone? I mean, you're obviously successful, Cassie hesitated. Attractive? Wealthy? Charming? Steele's tone was self-deprecating. Because building a construction empire doesn't leave much time for dating. And the women who are interested in wealthy bikers usually want something that has nothing to do with who I actually am. And you think I'm different? I think you need money fast enough that you'll be honest with me instead of trying to figure out what I want to hear. Steele leaned forward, his dark eyes serious. That's worth more than you probably realize. Over the next hour, Steele outlined their week together. A charity gala tomorrow night, a business dinner with potential investors, a construction company barbecue, and what he called a family obligation that he refused to elaborate on. Rules, Steele said, handing her a folder. Separate hotel rooms always. Physical contact only when needed for appearances. Holding hands, arm around your shoulder. Nothing more intimate than what you'd be comfortable with your daughter seeing. Questions? What's my story? How did we meet? How long have we been dating? What do I say when people ask about my background? Truth, mostly. You're a waitress putting yourself through school while raising your daughter. We met at Ruby's diner, started talking, discovered we had more in common than expected. Steele's expression softened slightly. The only lie is that we're dating. Everything else about who you are, what you want, how you see the world, that stays honest. And after the week? After the week, you go back to your life, and I go back to mine. Clean break, no complications. The first test came that afternoon when Steele took Cassie shopping for clothes appropriate for their upcoming events. The boutique in Scottsdale was the kind of place where salespeople assessed your net worth before offering assistance. But Steele's presence changed the dynamic immediately. "Mr. Morrison," the manager gushed, appearing instantly when they entered. "How wonderful to see you again. Sarah, this is Cassie. She needs a complete wardrobe for several events this week. Price is not a factor." What followed was 2 hours of Cassie trying on clothes that cost more than her monthly salary, while Steele offered opinions with surprising insight into fashion and color coordination. "How do you know so much about women's clothing?" Cassie asked, as they debated between 2 evening gowns. "Ex-wife. Before the divorce, she used to drag me shopping constantly. Turns out I was paying attention." Steele's voice carried old pain carefully contained. "Blue brings out your eyes. Red makes you look like you're trying too hard. What happened with your ex-wife?" She decided that being married to a biker, even a wealthy one, wasn't compatible with the social climbing she wanted to do. Apparently construction money comes with too much dirt under the fingernails. Cassie studied Steele's profile as he examined a black cocktail dress, seeing vulnerability he probably didn't know he was revealing. "How long were you married?" 8 years. 3 of them probably happy, 5 of them pretending everything was fine while she found reasons to be embarrassed by where my money came from. "I'm sorry. Don't be. Better to find out who someone really is before you waste more time pretending compatibility exists when it doesn't." That evening, Cassie called Emma from her hotel room, a suite that was nicer than any apartment she'd ever lived in, to check on homework and make sure her daughter was settled with Ruby for the week. "Mom, where exactly are you?" Emma asked, with the suspicious intelligence of a teenager who'd learned to read between the lines of her mother's explanations. "Phoenix, working a temporary job that pays really well. What kind of job requires you to stay in a hotel and buy new clothes?" Cassie closed her eyes, hating how easily her smart daughter cut through partial truths. "The kind that's going to help us get ahead for once, baby. Trust me? Always. But Mom, be careful. You sound different. Like nervous, excited different." After hanging up, Cassie stood at her window overlooking Phoenix's glittering skyline, wondering if Emma was right about her sounding different. Maybe it was the luxury suite. Maybe it was the expensive clothes hanging in the closet. Or maybe it was the growing realization that Jake Morrison was nothing like the simple transaction she'd expected. Tomorrow night's charity gala would be their first public appearance together, and Cassie was beginning to understand that pretending to love someone might be more dangerous than actually loving them, especially when the someone was a man who'd seen her desperation and responded with unexpected kindness. The Phoenix Children's Hospital Charity Gala was held at the Phoenician Resort, where Phoenix's elite gathered in designer gowns and custom tuxedos to raise money for pediatric cancer research. Cassie had never seen so much wealth concentrated in one room, had never imagined herself walking among people who casually bid $20,000 on silent auction items. Steele appeared at her hotel room door at 7 sharp, wearing a black tuxedo that transformed him from dangerous biker to sophisticated businessman, but the contradiction somehow made him more compelling rather than less authentic. "You look incredible," Steele said, offering his arm as they walked toward the resort's ballroom. Cassie smoothed the blue silk gown they'd chosen together, still amazed by how expensive clothes could make someone feel like a different person. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up." "Good. That means you're not trying to be someone you're not." The ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers, and enough diamonds to fund a small country. But what surprised Cassie was how naturally Steele moved through this environment, greeting people by name, asking about their families, demonstrating genuine interest in conversations that went far beyond superficial networking. "Jake," called a distinguished man approaching with his wife. "Good to see you. And this must be the woman we've heard so much about. David, Patricia, I'd like you to meet Cassie Martinez." Cassie, David, and Patricia Thornton, they're the reason we have a new children's wing at Phoenix General. Cassie found herself drawn into conversation about education, single parenting, and the challenges of raising children in modern society. What struck her was how Steele presented her, not as arm candy or a convenient date, but as someone whose opinions mattered, whose experiences were valuable. "You're very lucky," Patricia whispered to Cassie during a quiet moment. "Jake's one of the good ones. We've been trying to set him up for years, but he's been selective." "Selective how?" "He doesn't date women who want him for his money. Says he can afford anything except another person who sees him as a bank account instead of a human being." The evening progressed through dinner, speeches, and dancing that felt surprisingly natural. Steele was an excellent dancer, leading with confidence while maintaining the respectful distance he'd promised. But Cassie found herself noticing details that had nothing to do with their business arrangement. The way he listened when she spoke, the protective way he positioned himself when aggressive donors got too close, the genuine warmth in his voice when he talked about the hospital's mission. "Tell me about your daughter," Steele said, as they slow danced to music that masked their conversation from nearby couples. "Emma's 14, scary smart, and way too mature for her age. She wants to be a doctor, which terrifies me because I can barely afford community college, much less medical school. What does she think about you being here? She thinks I'm working a mysterious temporary job that pays well," which is technically true. Steele smiled at that. Technically, what would she think if she knew the truth? That her mother made a deal with someone way out of her league and is probably going to get her heart broken. Smart kid. Too smart. She sees things I wish she didn't have to see. Like what? Cassie was quiet for a moment, surprised by her urge to be honest with someone she barely knew. Like how scared I am all the time. How close we always are to losing everything. How much I wish I could give her the kind of life where she didn't have to worry about whether we can afford school supplies. And what does Emma see when she looks at you? Someone doing her best with limited resources. "That's not what I see," Steele said softly. "What do you see?" "Someone who raised a brilliant daughter while working multiple jobs. Someone who maintains grace under pressure. Someone strong enough to accept help when she needs it, but proud enough to give honest value in return." The compliment hit deeper than Cassie expected, touching places where she'd hidden years of exhaustion and self-doubt. "You barely know me. I know enough. I know you counted out exact change for coffee every morning at Ruby's for 3 years. I know you always asked about other people's families but never talked about your own problems. I know you tip well even when you can't afford to." Cassie looked up at Steele, realizing he'd been watching her long before their arrangement began. "You've been coming to Ruby's for 3 years? Every Tuesday. You never noticed." "I would have remembered." "No, you wouldn't. I was just another customer, another face in the rotation. But I remembered you." The revelation shifted something between them, transforming their business arrangement into something more personal. Cassie began to understand that Steele hadn't chosen her randomly. He'd been interested long before desperation made her available. "Why didn't you ever say anything? Before, I mean. Because you were clearly struggling, clearly not interested in complications from customers. And because I figured someone like you wouldn't waste time on someone like me. Someone like you. Older, complicated, with more emotional baggage than a reasonable person should carry." Cassie studied Steele's face, seeing past the successful businessman facade to the man who'd spent 3 years admiring her from a distance. "What kind of baggage?" the kind that comes from building walls so high you forget how to let people climb them. Their conversation was interrupted by the evening's main event, a live auction featuring experiences money couldn't usually buy. When the auctioneer announced a week-long trip to Italy, Steele's hand went up. $25,000, he called out, competing against several other bidders. Going once, going twice, sold to Mr. Morrison for $38,000. Cassie stared at Steele in shock. You just spent almost $40,000 on a vacation. I spent $40,000 on pediatric cancer research. The vacation's just a bonus. That's more money than I make in 2 years. And you work harder than most people who make 10 times what you do. Money's just a tool, Cassie. What matters is how you use it. As the evening wound down and Steele walked Cassie back to her hotel room, she realized the dangerous territory she was entering. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. It was becoming something that could fundamentally change how she saw herself and what she believed she deserved. Tomorrow's the investor dinner, Steele said as they reached her door. Harder crowd, more business-focused. Think you can handle a room full of people who measure everything in profit margins? As long as you keep being yourself instead of trying to impress them. Steele's smile was worth more than the expensive clothes or luxury accommodations. Deal. As Cassie closed her hotel room door, she realized that pretending to love Jake Morrison was becoming dangerously close to the real thing. The investor dinner at Morrison Construction's corporate headquarters revealed a side of Steele that Cassie hadn't expected. The shrewd businessman who'd built an empire through careful planning and calculated risks. The conference room overlooked the city where his cranes and equipment were reshaping the skyline, physical proof of what determination and intelligence could accomplish. Gentlemen, Steele addressed the room full of potential partners. I'd like you to meet Cassie Martinez. She's been invaluable in helping me understand the human impact of our infrastructure projects. Cassie found herself seated among men who controlled hundreds of millions in government contracts, discussing highway projects and bridge construction with the confidence of someone who'd spent years listening to conversations she wasn't supposed to understand. Her experience at Ruby's Diner, overhearing truckers, construction workers, and engineers discuss their jobs, proved surprisingly valuable. Ms. Martinez, asked Harrison Webb, a federal contractor worth more than most small countries. What's your perspective on the environmental concerns raised about the I-10 expansion? I think people forget that infrastructure improvements help working families more than anyone else, Cassie replied thoughtfully. Shorter commutes mean more time at home. Better roads mean lower vehicle maintenance costs. These aren't abstract policy issues. They're daily reality for people who can't afford to live close to where they work. The room went quiet, as wealthy men absorbed wisdom from someone who'd actually lived the consequences of their decisions. Steele watched Cassie with an expression that mixed pride and something deeper, more personal. Interesting perspective, Webb said finally. Most environmental activists don't consider the economic impact on working-class families. Most environmental activists haven't had to choose between gas money and groceries, Cassie replied, with gentle honesty that made her point without attacking anyone. The evening progressed through technical discussions that revealed Steele's expertise in areas Cassie had never considered. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was someone who understood complex engineering, federal regulations, and the political dynamics that determined which projects got funded. Jake, Webb said as dinner concluded, your company's safety record is impressive, but I'm concerned about the human element. How do you ensure worker loyalty when other contractors are offering higher wages? We don't just employ people, Steele replied. We invest in them. Training programs, family health insurance, profit sharing. Our turnover rate is less than 5% because we treat workers like assets instead of expenses. Cassie realized she was witnessing something rare, a businessman who'd succeeded without sacrificing the values that made success worth having. Steele had built something substantial while maintaining integrity, proving that wealth and decency weren't mutually exclusive. After the investors left, Steele and Cassie sat alone in the conference room, city lights creating a backdrop for conversation that felt more intimate than anything they'd shared. You were amazing tonight, Steele said. Webb's been skeptical about our projects for years, but you gave him perspective he'd never considered. I just told the truth about what it's like to be on the receiving end of policy decisions. That's exactly what made it powerful. You have authenticity. these guys have been insulated from for decades. Cassie studied Steele's face, seeing exhaustion that went beyond long business days. What's the cost of all this? Building something this big? Maintaining relationships with people who measure everything in profit margins? Loneliness, mostly. You spend so much time being who other people need you to be that you forget who you actually are underneath. And who are you? Underneath all this? Steele was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the city he'd helped build. Someone who grew up poor, joined the military because college wasn't an option, came home and started digging ditches until I figured out how to bid on the contracts instead of just fulfilling them. What about family? The obligation you mentioned? My brother Danny. He's complicated. Addicted to meth, in and out of rehab, constantly needing money to solve problems that money can't actually fix. Steele's voice carried the weight of years spent trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. The family obligation is his birthday dinner tomorrow night. That must be difficult. Danny sees me as an ATM with legs, shows up when he needs money, disappears when he gets it, resurfaces 6 months later with new problems and new demands. Steele's smile was bitter. The dinner is our annual attempt to pretend we're still brothers instead of strangers who happen to share DNA. Cassie felt something shift between them. Steele was sharing real pain instead of maintaining the careful distance their arrangement required. Why keep trying? Because he's the only family I have left. And because giving up on people you love is a luxury I can't afford. The vulnerability in Steele's voice made Cassie understand that his wealth hadn't protected him from the kind of heartbreak that money couldn't solve. His success had isolated him from authentic relationships while amplifying his sense of responsibility for people who might not deserve his loyalty. Jake, Cassie said softly, what happens after this week ends? You go back to your life, and I go back to mine. Clean break, like we agreed. What if I don't want a clean break? Steele looked at her with an expression that mixed hope and fear in equal measure. Cassie, you need to understand something. This week, these dinners, this hotel, these clothes, this isn't real life. This is what money can buy, but it's not what money can sustain. What do you mean? I mean when the charity galas end and the business dinners stop, I'm still a 45-year-old biker with more money than sense, and a brother who'll probably overdose before Christmas. You're still a single mother who deserves someone without my complications. What if I think your complications make you more interesting instead of less suitable? Then you're not thinking clearly about what you'd be getting into. Before Cassie could respond, Steele's phone buzzed with a text that made his expression darken immediately. Danny, he's at the police station again. Possession charges. Do you need to go? I need to call my lawyer, post bail, and figure out how to get him into rehab for the 4th time. Steele rubbed his face with hands that had built an empire but couldn't save his brother. This is what loving me looks like, Cassie. Crisis calls in the middle of nice evenings. Money spent on problems that never get solved. As Steele gathered his things to leave, Cassie realized she was seeing the real cost of his success, the way wealth made him responsible for everyone else's problems, while isolating him from anyone who might want to share his burdens. Tomorrow's family dinner would reveal whether their growing connection could survive the collision between the fairy tale week they'd created and the complicated reality of Steele's actual life. Danny Morrison was everything his older brother wasn't. Charming in a way that felt dangerous, handsome in the manner of someone who'd learned to use his looks to manipulate sympathy, and clearly high despite supposedly being fresh out of rehab. The restaurant Steele had chosen for their family birthday dinner was upscale but private, the kind of place where embarrassing scenes could be contained. "Big brother," Danny announced loudly as they approached his table, already working on his 2nd beer despite being 30 minutes early. "And who's this beautiful lady? Please tell me you're not another social worker." "Danny, this is Cassie." "Cassie, my brother Danny." Steele's voice was carefully controlled, but Cassie could see the tension in his shoulders as he assessed his brother's condition. "Cassie," Danny repeated, looking her up and down with an appreciation that made Steele's jaw clench. "You're way too good looking to be dating my uptight brother. What's your angle? The money? The bikes? Or are you one of those women who think she can fix damaged goods?" "Danny," Steele's voice carried warning that would have intimidated most people. "What? I'm just being honest. Jake's got money and emotional baggage in equal measure. Fair warning, sweetheart. He's not as stable as he looks." Cassie watched the dynamic between brothers, seeing years of disappointment and manipulation played out in Danny's casual cruelty and Steele's careful restraint. This wasn't just addiction. This was someone who'd weaponized his problems to control others. "Tell me about yourself, Danny," Cassie said, deflecting attention from Steele's obvious discomfort. "What do you do when you're not in rehab?" "I'm an artist," Danny replied with the grandiosity of someone high on more than just alcohol. "Sculptor, specifically. Very avant-garde, very misunderstood. Jake bankrolls my creative endeavors between legal troubles." "What kind of sculptures?" "The kind that explore the intersection of human suffering and societal oppression." Danny's words were slurring slightly. Of course, no one appreciates real art anymore. Everyone wants safe, commercial garbage instead of honest expression. Steele signaled the waiter for coffee, clearly hoping to sober his brother up before the evening deteriorated further. "Danny, maybe we should order dinner." "I'm not hungry for food, big brother. I'm hungry for authenticity. Something you wouldn't understand, living in your corporate bubble with your fake girlfriend." The word fake hit like a slap, reminding Cassie that Danny's drug-addled perception had somehow cut through to the truth she and Steele had been carefully avoiding. "What makes you think she's fake?" Steele asked dangerously. "Because women like her don't date men like you unless there's money involved. Look at her, Jake. She's young, beautiful, clearly out of her usual element. Either you're paying her or you're lying to her about who you really are." Cassie felt heat rise in her cheeks. Not because Danny was wrong about the money, but because his accusation dismissed her agency and reduced her to a stereotype. Maybe women like me see past surface judgments to recognize character when we find it. "Character?" Danny laughed bitterly. "You mean the character that abandoned his little brother the moment military service became more important than family loyalty?" "That's enough," Steele said quietly. "Is it? Because I've been waiting 8 years for you to feel guilty enough to really make amends. How much money have you thrown at my problems, Jake? 50,000? 100? And what has it bought you? A brother who still resents you for choosing duty over family?" Cassie realized she was witnessing the source of Steele's emotional walls. Not just Danny's addiction, but the guilt Steele carried for choices made years ago that had shaped both their lives. "What happened between you two?" Cassie asked, though she suspected she might regret learning the answer. "Jake left for the army when I was 16, Danny said, his voice carrying years of accumulated hurt. "Left me alone with Dad's drinking and Mom's denial. Promised he'd come back and fix everything. But military discipline was easier than dealing with a fucked-up family, so he kept re-enlisting while I fell apart. You were offered the same opportunities," Steele replied. "College, military service, legitimate jobs. You chose drugs instead. I chose numbing the pain you left behind when you decided saving strangers was more heroic than saving your brother." The accusation hung in the air like poison, revealing the complicated truth behind Steele's success. He'd built an empire while his brother destroyed himself, and the guilt from that divergence had shaped every relationship since. "Danny," Cassie said gently, "addiction isn't anyone else's fault. Jake couldn't have saved you from choices only you could make. Easy wisdom from someone who's known us for 5 minutes, Danny sneered. "Tell me, sweetheart, how long before you realize that Jake's money comes with emotional strings attached? How long before his need to rescue people becomes suffocating instead of romantic?" The personal attack was designed to drive wedges between them, but it revealed something Cassie hadn't considered: Steele's pattern of trying to save people who might not want to be saved. "I think," Cassie said carefully, "that Jake's generosity comes from genuine care, not manipulation. Give it time. Jake needs to be needed. When you stop needing him, he'll find someone who does." The dinner ended badly, with Danny storming out after Steele refused to write him another check for artistic supplies that everyone knew meant drugs. Cassie and Steele sat in the aftermath, the evening's ugly truths settling between them like debris from an explosion. "I'm sorry," Steele said finally. "That was worse than usual." "Is he right? About you needing to be needed?" Steele was quiet for a long moment, considering honesty that might end their arrangement. "Maybe. I've spent so many years trying to fix things that I'm not sure I know how to love people who don't need fixing." "What about me? Do you think I need fixing?" "I think you need help, which is different from needing to be fixed." But maybe Danny's right about one thing. Maybe I'm attracted to your situation more than I'm attracted to you. The admission cut deep, confirming Cassie's worst fears about their connection. She was a project to him, a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. I see, Cassie said, standing from the table. Thank you for your honesty. As Cassie walked away from the restaurant and the fairy tale week that had made her forget her real life, she realized that some transactions cost more than money. They cost hope. Cassie's hotel room felt like a beautiful prison as she packed clothes that belonged to someone else's life, preparing to return to reality at Ruby's Diner, where problems were simple and heartbreak was something that happened to other people. The week with Steele had shown her possibilities she'd never imagined, but Danny's words and Steele's admission had shattered the illusion that any of it could be real. A knock on her door interrupted her packing. Steele stood in the hallway, still wearing his dinner jacket, but looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Can we talk? He asked. I think we've said enough. I think I said the wrong things because I was scared of saying the right ones. Cassie let him into the room that had become temporary sanctuary, watching as he took in her packed suitcase and the expensive clothes laid out for return to stores she'd never shop at again. You're leaving early, Steele observed. The week's over. The arrangement fulfilled. I got my money, you got your dates. Everyone wins. Except no one feels like winning. Cassie sat on the bed that had been more comfortable than anywhere she'd ever slept, looking at the man who'd shown her kindness before asking for anything in return. Jake, what your brother said about you needing to be needed, was there truth in that? Steele moved to the window overlooking Phoenix, the city where he'd built success that couldn't buy him the one thing money couldn't purchase. Yes, but not for the reasons Danny thinks. What reasons? I'm attracted to people who are strong enough to survive difficult circumstances, who maintain grace under pressure, who give more than they take even when they can't afford to. Steele turned to face her. That's not the same as wanting to fix you, isn't it? Cassie, you're not broken. You're dealing with circumstances that would destroy weaker people, and you're doing it with dignity and intelligence that humbles me. I don't want to fix your situation because I think you're inadequate. I want to help because you deserve better than constantly struggling just to survive. How do I know the difference? Steele was quiet for a moment, choosing words carefully. Because when I imagined this week ending, I wasn't thinking about finding another project or another person to rescue. I was thinking about whether someone like you could love someone like me without the money and fairy tale evenings. Someone like me? Someone real. Someone who sees past the surface to what actually matters. Someone who calls me on my bullshit while appreciating what I'm trying to build. Steele's voice grew rough with emotion. Someone who makes me want to be worthy of their respect instead of just their gratitude. Cassie felt her careful defenses cracking as she recognized genuine feeling behind Steele's words. Jake, I'm a single mother who serves coffee for a living. You own construction companies and move in circles where people bid $30,000 on vacation packages. How could that possibly work? I don't know, but I know I want to find out. And when the novelty wears off, when you realize that dating me means PTA meetings and grocery shopping and all the ordinary moments that aren't glamorous or exciting, then I'll discover whether I'm smart enough to appreciate ordinary moments with an extraordinary woman. Steele moved closer, not crowding but eliminating the distance that had defined their careful arrangement. Cassie, this week wasn't about the charity galas or business dinners. It was about discovering that someone exists who sees me clearly and chooses to stay anyway. Even after meeting Danny, after seeing what loving you might cost, especially after that. You didn't run when my brother attacked you, didn't judge me for his problems, didn't try to fix what can't be fixed. You just stayed. Cassie looked at this man who'd offered her money when she needed it most, who'd shown her kindness without expecting anything beyond honest companionship, who'd trusted her with his professional reputation and personal vulnerabilities. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you'd be willing to find out what we could build together without the artificial circumstances of this week. Real dates, real conversations, real relationship where we figure out compatibility instead of performing it. What about Emma? She's not some cute accessory to my life. She's my priority, my responsibility, my whole world. Then she's mine too, if you'll let me earn that privilege. The simple statement broke something open in Cassie's chest. Steele wasn't asking her to choose between him and her daughter. He was asking to be included in the life she'd built around Emma's needs. Jake, I can't be another person you try to save. If we do this, it has to be because you want me, not because you want to fix my circumstances. What if I want both? What if I want you and I want to make your life easier? Not because I think you can't handle it, but because I think you shouldn't have to handle it alone? Steele reached for her hands, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. Cassie, I've spent 45 years building walls around everything that mattered to me. This week, you've shown me what it feels like to let someone climb them. What if I fall? Then I catch you. What if I fall? Cassie looked at their joined hands, seeing the possibility of building something real from the artificial arrangement that had brought them together. Then we figure out how to catch each other. Steele's kiss was gentle, tentative, asking permission rather than taking it. When Cassie kissed him back, it tasted like possibility and courage and the kind of risk that made life worth living. So, what happens now? Cassie asked when they broke apart. Now, I take you home to meet your daughter properly. Now, we find out if a construction worker and a waitress can build something that lasts longer than a week. And the money? Keep it. Consider it a signing bonus for taking the biggest risk of both our lives. As Cassie unpacked clothes that might become part of her real wardrobe instead of costumes for a temporary role, she realized that sometimes the best transactions were the ones where both parties got more than they'd bargained for. Outside her window, Phoenix glittered with promises that seemed suddenly achievable for a woman brave enough to believe she deserved them. 1 year later, Cassie stood in the kitchen of the home she now shared with Steele, watching Emma demonstrate motorcycle maintenance techniques to her stepfather-to-be, while Ruby's diner hummed with activity visible through the window. Steele had bought the diner when the bank threatened foreclosure again, but Ruby still ran it, and Cassie still worked shifts when she wanted to stay connected to the world that had shaped her. "Mom," Emma called from the garage where she and Steele were restoring a vintage Harley together. "Jake says I can't paint flames on the gas tank until I understand internal combustion engines. Is that fair?" "Completely fair," Cassie replied, smiling at the easy relationship that had developed between her daughter and the man who'd become the father Emma had never had. Education first, artistic expression second. Steele appeared in the doorway, grease-stained and grinning, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Your daughter's going to be a better mechanic than I am before she graduates high school." "Good. She'll have options I never did." The transformation in their lives had been gradual but profound. Steele's business provided security Cassie had never imagined, but more importantly, his presence provided the kind of partnership she'd stopped believing possible. Emma flourished with a father figure who encouraged her intelligence while teaching practical skills, who showed up for school events and helped with homework without trying to replace the relationship she had with her mother. "Any word from Danny?" Cassie asked, noting the date on the calendar that marked another missed birthday dinner. Steele's expression grew serious. "Rehab, again. Different facility, same promises. I'm hoping this time is different, but I'm not counting on it." Cassie had learned to navigate the complicated grief of loving someone whose brother might never get clean, whose guilt might never fully heal. But she'd also learned that loving someone meant accepting their wounds alongside their strengths, their failures alongside their victories. The Morrison Foundation scholarship applications came in, Cassie said, changing the subject to something that brought Steele genuine joy. "How many this year?" 230. Kids from working families who want to pursue engineering or skilled trades. The foundation had been Steele's idea, using his wealth to create opportunities for children whose parents worked construction, served food, or struggled to make ends meet. Emma wants to help with the selection process. Of course she does. Kids got a social justice streak wider than the I-10. The scholarship program had become Cassie's full-time job, allowing her to leave waitressing behind while staying connected to the community that had raised her. She'd discovered talents for administration and advocacy she'd never known she possessed, skills that had been hiding behind years of simply trying to survive. "Jake," Emma called from the garage. "Mom, come see what we built." They found Emma standing beside a completely restored 1973 Harley Sportster, painted deep blue with silver accents that caught the afternoon light like captured sky. The motorcycle was beautiful, but more beautiful was the pride on Emma's face and the satisfaction on Steele's. "We're calling it the Emma Special," Steele announced. First bike built by the Morrison Construction Female Apprentice Program. The what? Cassie asked. Jake's starting a training program specifically for girls who want to learn skilled trades, Emma explained excitedly. I get to be the pilot case before it goes official next year. Cassie looked between her daughter and the man who'd become her anchor, seeing how naturally they'd bonded over projects that built both motorcycles and confidence. Emma had blossomed under Steele's mentorship, discovering mechanical aptitude that school had never revealed. There's something else, Steele said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket for the second time in their relationship. Emma and I have been discussing this. Discussing what? Whether you'd be willing to make our arrangement permanent. The ring was different this time. Not the elaborate diamond from their business relationship, but a simple band that held a stone she recognized. That's my grandmother's emerald, Cassie whispered. Emma showed me the photo. Thought you might want it reset instead of replaced. Steele's voice was uncertain, despite the obvious care that had gone into the gesture. She said your grandmother promised you'd wear it when you married someone worthy of the family legacy. Cassie looked at the ring that connected her past to her future, at the man who'd learned her history well enough to honor it, at the daughter who'd helped plan a proposal that celebrated their family, rather than just their romance. Emma approved this? I told Jake he had to ask both of us, Emma said seriously. Marriage affects the whole family, not just the couple. And what did you tell him? That he's proven himself worthy of us. That he makes you happy without trying to change you. That he's taught me things I never would have learned anywhere else. Emma's expression grew thoughtful. And that our family feels complete when he's part of it. Steele knelt beside the motorcycle they'd built together, offering the ring that would make their unconventional family official. Cassie Martinez, will you marry a biker who's still learning how to deserve you? Only if Jake Morrison will marry a waitress who's still learning how to believe she deserves good things. The kiss that sealed their engagement tasted like motor oil and promises, like ordinary moments made extraordinary by people who'd chosen to build something lasting from circumstances that could have remained temporary. When? Emma asked practically. When we're ready, Steele replied. No rush, no pressure, just 3 people figuring out how to be a family. As evening settled over Phoenix and the Morrison construction yard, Cassie realized they'd accomplished something unprecedented. They'd transformed a business arrangement into authentic love, had built a relationship that honored both their individual strength and their collective possibility. The price had been the courage to risk heartbreak when safety felt more prudent. The promise was everything they'd built together and everything they had yet to build. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and stay for the next ride. In the distance, motorcycles rumbled through city streets, carrying other stories of unexpected connection and chosen family. But in the Morrison garage, 3 people who'd found each other against impossible odds were already living their happily ever after, one restored motorcycle at a time.